Hello, everyone. Very good morning. Thanks to all of you who have joined. I'm Karthikeyan M, Product Marketing Manager at Zoho Survey, and I'll be your host today. Today's session is about 5 practical product research methods to improve product experience. To be concise, this is about how modern product teams reduce risk, use real user signals, and build with confidence before writing code. To add more context, AI has changed one thing forever, and that is speed. We can now build products in weeks instead of months. But here's the uncomfortable truth: most products do not fail because they were built slowly. They fail because they were built confidently without enough listening. Today, AI can write code, design interfaces, even suggest features at times. But what it cannot do reliably is tell you who truly cares about this problem, which feature actually matters, where users silently struggle. And that's where product research becomes the unfair advantage. At Zoho Survey, we see thousands of product teams across industries collecting feedback after launch. But the smartest teams validate before they invest, before they write a single line of code, before they even think about launching a new product. They ask, is this problem painful enough? Who feels it the most? And what does success look like in the user's words and not ours? This webinar is not about academic frameworks or 100-page research reports. It's about 5 practical methods you can actually run with fast, lean, and decisively, even if you're a small team or an early stage organization. These methods are industry agnostics, whether you are building SaaS, fintech, healthcare, tech, retail platforms, or even internal enterprise tools, the principles of validation stay the same. So by the end of this session, you'll get to know how to de-risk ideas early, how to use real user language to shape product experience, and how research can remove nice to have to a launch accelerator. Start by looking at the modern research method team, which teams are betting on before building anything. So, and one final note, the examples you'll see today are not from one industry or one kind of team. No matter whatever you are building, a customer facing product, an internal tool, or a platform used by millions, you will walk away with at least one research method you can run next week with your current users, budget, and team size. With this, I pass on back to my friend Sugandhan, and he will take it over from here. Over to you, Sugandhan.
Thank you, Karthikeyan. So I hope it's a very clear understanding about what we are going to look today. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today again. So I'm Suganthan from the Product Expert team in Zoho Survey. So what we'll explore today is how you can use surveys to reduce that risk by listening to users at every stage of your product journey. First thing that we could do is idea validation. That is something that you do before you build your product or your anything, any kind of things that you have something to work on, so you can do the idea validation. So one of the most valuable stages to run survey is before development begins. At this stage, every assumption is expensive. Instead of building first and hoping users adopt, you can use surveys to validate problem statements, test the feature concepts, or even evaluate early demand. A simple idea validation survey can save months of time in terms of development of production and significant engineering. So the outcome of this idea validation survey is, when it's done well, the idea validation survey answers very powerful questions. What you learn is this problem painful enough to solve, or who experiences this pain more frequently? Which features users actually care about, or are they even willing to pay, or it's just nice to have feature? This also helps identify early adopters, that is, users who are excited enough to try out your solutions early. The biggest outcome here is risk reduction. You're not guessing, you're building with evidence. Let's take a prime example. Everyone would have come across Airbnb at some point of time during our vacations, or maybe during our conferences, or during official meets, business trips, and so on. So the problem to validate for Airbnb during the initial stages were users found hotels were very expensive or they were unavailable during major events like conferences happening, or maybe a World Cup event being hosted on specific cities, or any political agenda meetings that's been done on a large scale. So these were some of the key things during which a prime time has been done. They were very expensive. So travelers were looking for alternates like affordable lodging, as well as something local that could connect with the culture of that specific place. So what they really did is they launched a simple landing page to attract initial booking users, where they tested a high demand event where conferences were happening, where the hotels were sold out, and they charged real money from the customers to validate the willingness to pay. So how they validated? They actually observed the bookings, not opinions. They spoke directly with the host as well as with the guest. By doing this, they identified the biggest barrier for adoption is the trust. So the key insight from the market research Airbnb did was, or what they gained out of this was, user would stay in stranger's home if trust was established. Personal connections mattered more than prices. So in order to work on this, what they did from these validations are like they started building reviews, profile managements, and early verifications. So that helped in building the trust between the host and the guest. And they invested heavily in professional photographies for listing. So the way it looks needs to be appealing for initial users who are looking to get into something. So the photography did matter. By doing this, they positioned Airbnb as a trusted marketplace, not just a cheap lodging. So the bottom line is Airbnb validated human behavior before they started scaling their technology. So this was the initial go-to method they adopted before they went big. Now, everything sounds good when we talk about market research, when we talk about surveys in terms of understanding what they are. But what if, in case you don't do this, you don't do the idea validation and you assume that it is going to work? Let's take another example from a different industry. If you see this, this could be very familiar. It's nothing but aircon conditioning buttons that was available on your cars in the past. But now what you currently see is a single screen setup, which manages everything right from the media control to the Google, to the maps, to air conditioning controlling, media control, everything in a single screen. This looks minimalist, but is it really functional enough to satisfy everything in one giant screen? This is where the problem started arising. Driver had to look away from the road while driving to adjust the volume controls or even the aircon temperature settings and so on. This had a distraction during the driving, and this caused many more accidents compared to the knobs that were available to adjust those. These were simple things that were available, and automobile industries thought this is a bit fancy and users would like it. Of course, it looks fancy, but in real term, is it user friendly? That's where the questions came. So upon continuous feedbacks from various critics and from the user themselves, now the automobile industry have slowly started shifting or rolling back to physical buttons rather than having everything in touch sensitive. So what happened is they would have invested millions of dollars into every single technology, and a lot of time as well in terms of adoption. Now, everything has gone to waste and they are reverting back to what really worked well for them in the past. This is one prime example. Next, let's look into the second option, that's customer segmentation and persona research. The goal is to build the product or the service is for the right audience and not to everyone. Not all users are the same, and treating them the same leads to weak products. So, customer segmentation helps you understand who your users really are, how needs differ by role, industry, or experience level. With survey, you can segment responses by job role or the size of the company's user behavior or even business goals. So this allows you to build real personas, not fictional ones, and design features and messaging that resonate with each of the groups. For customer segmentation and persona research, what could be a much better example than Netflix? Different users watch very differently. So, how do we personalize for each is the problem to validate for Netflix. So, how they started segmenting the customers. First, the key observations were the viewing behavior, for reference, like binge watchers or casual watchers, and what kind of like the content preference they have, and what uh, time of the day they are using or watching the most in terms of consumption, and what kind of devices they are also using, like mobile device or computer or iPads or tablet device and so on. And also the completion rate, whether they are starting a movie and ending it in between, or they're watching it all together, or if it's a series, how long they're going to take. So all these key aspects they started observing in terms to segment their customers. So upon these parameters being closely monitored, they started identifying the personas like binge watchers who consume full seasons quickly, casual viewers watch occasionally, often on weekends, and mobile snackers like they have short content during commute, or family viewers who have shared profiles with kid safe content and so on. So with these identity, they did is like they personalize the home screens per persona, so that really improve the traction about the, the volume of views that you can actually get from each of the users, and the amount of content has been intake by every single users. And autoplay and next episode for binge users that really helped in taking them or keeping them in the same seat rather than skipping or coming back at a later date in time, and kids profile for family viewers. So these personas really helped in improving their business, and this turned out to be a huge profit in terms of revenue, like millions of dollars have been generated just by having segmentation across each of the users. The takeaway is segmentation turn one platform into millions of personalized experiences. The next methodology we'll look into is the feature prioritization using real user data. Every product team face this challenge. Too many feature requests, but we don't have enough time nor resources. Surveys help you move from opinion-based prioritization to impact-based prioritization. You can compare what users ask for, what they rate as the most valuable feature or the valuable service that they're looking at, and what will really influence their decisions to stay in a current solution or upgrade to have much better features in it. So this ensures your roadmap reflects customer value and not just internal noises. Zoom meeting is one of the prime examples for this. So while Zoom were launched, they were competing with Skype, WebEx, Google Meet, and all of them had many more features. They started looking into the user data regarding what were the pain points in the users. So, the drop off rate during calls were a significant problem, and user complaints tagged by category, support tickets during the peak usages, and call failures and reconnection data. These are the basics that needs to be addressed rather than having fancy data. So with the insight that they gain from the real data is user didn't really care about the advanced features. All they cared about was the calls not dropping because one failed call is equal to loss of trust. So the feature prioritization decision were moved into the stability of the call and low latency. They differed from heavy UI customizations or in-call games and so on, whereas they built auto-adjusting bandwidth logic to make sure everything went smooth. So the result is explosive adoption during the COVID, and this became one of the default meeting tools in spite of having legends or those who were in the market for years put together, like Skype, Google Meet, or WebEx. The takeaway from this is the best feature is the one that works every time. And we are looking into the next method, that is usability and experience feedback from early birds. So the goal is to improve the product experience. Feedback is a last chance to fix the issues quietly. Instead of waiting for reviews on app stores or churn, you can proactively ask, was anything confusing? What slowed you down and what didn't work as expected? So when we ask the right questions to the users at the right time, we get to know what we're missing in our services or in our product. So surveys allow you to embed feedbacks directly into the product experience. So you can use a HTML or iframe link to embed the surveys on your in-app product or on your websites so that you better understand where they drop off or where the friction really comes out. So this results in better usability and higher adoption when it's fixed. And the first impression at launch would be way more great than having all these informations after it's been affected in your overall reviews. Volvo is known for its safety. As Volvo introduced advanced driver assistance and safety systems, that is ADAS, they needed to ensure drivers understood the features of the ADAS, whether they trust them or they didn't misuse or ignore the safety alerts that were being given as a feedback during their driving. So the early users were the safety conscious families or professional drivers like the fleet or long distance drivers, and the first time users of ADAS features as well. So the experience issues from early users were drivers misunderstood what ADAS could and could not do. Warning alerts felt too frequent or intrusive. Some drivers overtrusted the automation and some completely ignored it. Safety messages were unclear in real driving conditions. So everything is not the same in the testing environment and in real time scenario. So it does differ. So how they started working on it is like they started collecting the data from the black box, that is the vehicle data that's been stored, and they look into the driver reactions at the braking timings and the alerts that's been given to the drivers, and dealer and service level feedbacks like what happened, and real data usage testing in different geographies as well as with the customer opinions. The key insights from early users were they needed clear feedback on systems. Alert had to be informative, not alarming. So safety features must support but not distract the driver. And trust grows when systems behave as you expect it to work. So upon all these aspects, the result is like they redesigned the visual and audio alerts to be calmer and clearer. They improved the steering feedback, like the haptic touch that gives you the sense of alert and better explanation in car about what ADAS could do, and refine timings of collisions and lane departure warnings and so on. So the takeaway is for Volvo, usability feedback turned advanced safety system into a trusted factor. Trust is all matters when it comes to any features or product that is being used or that needs to be adopted. The final method is post-launch feedback, where you can have continuous improvement. Once a product is live, feedbacks become even more critical. The goal is to improve the retention and long-term product success. So what are the ways that you can basically achieve this? You can do NPS surveys, CSAT or CES. That's basically Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction, and customer experience surveys. So once a product is live, feedback becomes even more critical. So post-launch surveys help you track satisfaction, loyalty, and the effort required to use the product. Metrics like the NPS, CSAT, and CES act as early warning signals. So instead of reacting to churn, you can prevent it by listening and improving continuously. A continuous feedback loop that improves customer loyalty and the growth. Now, when we talk about all these post-launch feedbacks, one prime example that comes to my mind is Apple. They have been in the industry for so long and very successful. Of course, they do miss out some of the product launches. I'm sorry. Some of the products doesn't work as they expect. But what really matters is they listen to the customers to continuously improve on the features that they provide. NPS is one thing that Apple does it continuously. That is, would their customers recommend their products to their friends and family? Yes or no? Based on that, they take this very seriously and what really stopping customers from not recommending. So they started working on it. And every single features that you see across devices really helped in shaping them with the user experience, LU. And not just that, they also do market research across various segments, not just for the devices, including the software updates. Now, if a new iOS software has been released, so you can update it. But upon updating, the most common complaints that's been received is like battery drains out drastically. So these were the complaints that did Apple here. So to fix this, what they really did is the issue is not with the iOS, it's with the health of the battery. But the battery health were not listed, so you can't really look into what is the current status. So they made it transparent to let you know that what is the health of your battery. And upon looking into that, if it's something below 80 out of 100, then you need to replace it for better performance for your overall devices. So these simple, minute things that really change the game for Apple. And they do set the industry benchmark for NPS score as 61. Right. So let's look into the tips and tricks. So to wrap up, here are a few best practices we can see successful team follows. Always frame surveys around the user problems, not with your solution. Keep the survey focused. So long surveys reduce the completion rates, and you can have a mix of open-end and close-end questions to measure and understand what they're looking at. You can combine the ratings with the feedback, and you can segment early users with different users see values differently, because every insight that really matters. And most importantly, validate the willingness to pay, not just interest, because interest is never equal to demand. So better understand whether they are willing to pay for it, because towards the end, revenue is what all matters for an organization. So even if it's a very good feature to have, but if people are not willing to pay for it, or it's not demanding enough to solve a real problem, then it's of no use. So when we talk about research in general, two things that comes to my mind. One is a quantitative market research, and the other would be a qualitative market research. Let's start with quantitative research. This is where you answer questions like how many users face this problem, how often does it occur, or which option is preferred by the majority. So the quantitative research gives you confidence at scale. When you're making roadmaps or product decisions, numbers help remove bias. For example, instead of saying many users want this feature, you can say like 72% of power users rated this as a high priority feature. Now that's a very different conversation with stakeholders. So a quantitative market research really helps. Now, numbers alone don't tell the full story, and that's where qualitative research comes in. Qualitative research help you understand why users behave the way they do, what frustrates them, and what they actually mean when they choose an option. An open-end response often reveals insights you didn't even think to ask about. For example, users may rate a feature poorly, not because it's unnecessary, but because it's confusing or poorly positioned. This is where empathy is built and great decisions are made for the UX. Now let's look into a sample research survey. It's basically a SaaS idea validation. So you can have questions on your survey, something like this, just to give you an idea, so how you can quickly kickstart the program. So what best describes your role? Let me just answer along while we answer. What is the size of your organization? What type of company do you work for? And how often do you face challenge with a specific problem? So you can have it like daily, weekly, or whatever that comes to your mind. So how painful is this problem for your team today? It's extremely painful. What is the biggest impact of this problem? It's a manual effort as well as poor customer experience. So what do you currently use to manage or solve this problem? Currently, we don't have any solutions for this, but yeah, we are looking for one or something. So what are the biggest limitations of your current solution? You can have it over here. And what outcome matters the most if a SaaS product solve this problem? So you can rank them like 1 to 6 and something. And how valuable would a SaaS product would be for your team if it really solves it? Extremely valuable. So the next question right away comes here is, would you be consider paying for a SaaS solution that solves this problem? Because don't just assume, understand whether they would be willing to pay. So what pricing modules? Is it like per user fee, usage based, freemium with updates and so on? And what price range would be acceptable for the solution? Of course, people are going to underestimate, but still it's better to know what would be the right thing from the user perspective. So if there is something that's like a no-brainer, you can let them know. And would you also be interested in beta testing? That is early users. Yes, maybe. So that you have clear bandwidth about the users, what they're looking at, what problems they had, and would they be willing to pay? And are they also looking at early testing phases where you get real feedbacks, not just assumptions? A simple survey does the job in terms of capturing all these informations. Now, if you are looking to do surveys for your research, you can try Zoho Survey. You can manually build surveys right from the scratch, or you can even build surveys using AIs. For reference, let's say we spoke about ADAS functionality in one of the examples. So maybe let me just have it a prompt like ADAS validation survey and generate the survey. Let's see what comes up. All right, so we have it. So how satisfied are you with the ADAS system performance? How likely are you going to recommend the system to others? So it's really quick and it's up to the point. So if you feel this works for you, you can use this, give it a name and create. And you can further modify the questions to your taste. And once the questions is ready, you can go to the settings, add a logo in terms of personalizations, and have your custom end messages over here. Like what would you like to convey when someone completes? And go to the themes, and you can apply one of the customizable themes and further modify it to your taste. And then you can just go to launch and publish the survey. By doing this, we are going to give you a unique link. So you can share this link with your participants using any tool of your choice, whereas we also have inbuilt emails, SMS options, and we also give you the pop-up links or the embed codes for embedding it on your website. But if in case you're running out of time to do the test, to do the market research, or you don't have the right audience to get it done, we have the market research panel available. So you can directly purchase responses by choosing the right target audience. So who, from which country you want the data to be, which gender, the age category, the household income, marital status, what is the qualification in terms of education. You can have it over here. And then you can look for the employment status, like they should be full-time employed and so on, and which industry they need to belong to and so on. So you can have all these uh, targets being set, and you can look for the pricing to be paid for this specific 100 responses. It's going to cost you somewhere around 1.8 US dollars per response. And it's estimated to be delivered around 1st of Feb. So within 3-4 days, you have the data ready, and within minutes, you were able to create surveys, design it, and launch it out right away. It's as simple as that. When we talk about surveys, where great product begins is with data and not assumptions. So every time when you're looking to do any kind of surveys for your business requirements, is it for your customer satisfaction, loyalty, market research, you name anything, Zoho survey has your back, and you can always rely on us. Thank you one and all for this, for your time, and I hope I added some values to the way that you look into the market research.